You are an apex predator. You're running an incredibly advanced operating system, your brain, which burns 20% of your body's daily energy just to keep the lights on. And yet, for 2 hours every single night, this highly efficient survival machine paralyzes your body and forces you to hallucinate. It locks you in a private theater and plays absurd, sometimes terrifying films with no warning and no refunds. Ever woken up in a cold sweat staring at the ceiling thinking, what on earth was that? On paper, this looks like a design flaw. We're the species that built AI and put a rover on Mars, and yet every night our own hardware drags us into a fever dream and says, enjoy this, your rationality's been switched off. Why would something that advanced render itself completely defenseless just to watch a movie in its own skull? The paralysis has a name. REM atonia, your brain cutting the connection to your spinal cord so you can't physically act out your dreams. Without it, you'd be punching walls in the dark. Fine, that part's a safety feature. But what's the point of the hallucinations themselves? What is your prehistoric hardware actually processing when the lights go out? Let's reverse engineer the subconscious. For most of human history, we misread our own wiring completely. Ancient civilizations treated dreams as incoming transmissions, messages from the gods, prophecies for priests to decode. Aristotle got closer early on, arguing dreams were emotional residue from waking life, not magic. Then, in 1899, Sigmund Freud showed up and tried to systematically decode the subconscious. Credit where it's due, he was the first to insist there's a code here worth cracking. But most of modern neuroscience treats his specific theories, repressed childhood desire, dreams as coded wish fulfillment, as closer to elegant storytelling than hard science. Think of him less as a scientist handing you final answers, more as the guy who unlocked the door, even if half of what he found on the other side was wrong. Here's what we know now, mechanically. In REM sleep, your prefrontal cortex, logic, reason, impulse control, shuts down almost entirely. Meanwhile, your amygdala, the fear and emotion center, goes into overdrive, pure, uninhibited emotion, zero logical supervision. That's why dreams feel intensely real, yet make no rational sense. Your cognitive architecture is basically running an emotional simulator with the safety rails removed. Because the logic center is offline, the dream world becomes fertile ground for what Freud called wish fulfillment, the idea that repressed daytime desires resurface at night, disguised. Say you work at a startup and layoff rumors are circulating. You're terrified, but you smile through it at the office. That night, you don't dream about an HR meeting. You dream you're on stage, mid-presentation, and your teeth start falling out into your hands. Freud would say your brain encrypted an abstract corporate fear into a primal symbol, losing power, losing control. Neat theory, satisfying even. But here's the problem with treating it as universal law. Freud's everything is a hidden desire model doesn't hold up every single night, and modern neuroscience is what actually exposed the crock. Sometimes you're not decoding trauma at all. You're just standing in your kitchen making a sandwich or staring at a spreadsheet because your brain is running memory consolidation, quietly defragmenting the hard drive. Your brain isn't only a trauma processor, it's a learning engine. Play Tetris for 6 hours and you'll close your eyes and see falling blocks. Code for 8 hours and you'll dream in syntax errors. Sometimes a dream isn't a dark secret, it's just a system update, and Freud simply didn't have the tools in 1899 to know that. Some dreams are universal glitches, inherited glitches baked into the human operating system, older than language itself. Naked in public. Freud blamed repressed exhibitionism, the blunter, more likely answer, threat simulation. For a prehistoric human, exile from the tribe meant death. This dream is your amygdala rehearsing the worst case, total exposure, total rejection by the herd. Still stuck in an exam a decade later? You haven't seen a classroom in 10 years, and yet there you are, blank paper, clock ticking, panic rising. This one isn't ancient biology, it's a live readout of imposter syndrome. Your brain reaches for the most vivid being judged and found unqualified memory it has on file and replays it whenever that anxiety resurfaces in adult life, a new job, a big presentation, a performance review. Running, but your legs won't move. You're trying to flee something and your body is stuck in slow motion. During REM, your motor cortex is under the same paralysis protocol as the rest of you, so when your dream narrative demands urgent movement, the signal fires, but the muscles never answer. The result, that unbearable, syrup-slow chase. The falling sensation. Quick correction, that violent jolt right as you drift off isn't a dream at all. It's a hypnic jerk firing in stage 1 before dreaming even starts. Likely a vestigial reflex from when our primate ancestors slept in trees. Muscle relaxation gets misread as slipping off a branch, and the brain jolts you awake to save your life. Full narrative falling dreams off a skyscraper mid-free fall come later in REM and mean something else, a waking life feeling of losing support or control. The death of a loved one. Freud traced sibling death dreams to toddler-era jealousy, a child too young to grasp permanence, just registering that a new baby stole their parents' attention. Buried resentment resurfacing decades later as tragedy. Take that one with the same grain of salt as the rest of his work. Modern psychology has moved past most of Freud's specific claims, but the instinct underneath them still holds. There are no random connections in the brain. Every scenario your mind renders at 3 a.m., whether it's an amygdala-run threat drill, muscle memory housekeeping, or genuine emotional processing, is doing biological work, even when the plot makes zero sense. And once in a while, something stranger happens. You notice mid-dream that you're dreaming. That's lucid dreaming, the moment your prefrontal cortex flickers back online inside the simulation. Effectively, you found admin mode in your own operating system. But here's the harder question underneath all of this, and neuroscience still doesn't have a clean answer. If this is just data processing, threat rehearsal, memory consolidation, emotional filing, why does any of it need to be felt? A hard drive doesn't need to hallucinate to defragment. The best working theory is that unconscious computation can sort information, but it can't rehearse a response. To test whether a threat reaction actually works, the brain seems to need a body inside a scenario, not just a data set about one. Which means the hallucination isn't a side effect of the processing. It might be the mechanism itself. You don't just compute the simulation, you have to run it live from the inside, or it doesn't count as a rehearsal at all. Which reframes the whole nightly ordeal. You're not being subjected to a broken screening every night. You're the test subject and the lab. Running a rehearsal, your ancient hardware still insists on staging in full, whether or not your modern life has any use for it. You don't need lucidity to start decoding your own hardware, though. For the next 3 nights, keep a notebook by your bed and write down whatever you remember the second you wake up. No editing, no interpreting, just the raw footage. Patterns show up faster than you'd expect, and within a week, you'll start spotting your own recurring glitches. The person who understands their own nightmares doesn't just sleep better, they get root access to a mind that's been quietly rehearsing for a world that stopped existing 10,000 years ago, and every night it runs the simulation anyway.